Subscribe to Film Companion for your film fix. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the second webinar of the Indian Film Industry Forum series organized by ComScore and Film Companion. My name is Anupama Chopra, and I'm going to be your moderator for this session. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping rules for the audience. You've joined the webinar today in listen-only mode, which means you can hear us, but we can't hear you. If you have any questions, we ask that you please use the Q&A feature on your webinar dashboard, and we'll look at answering those questions after we've had the conversation. We'll also make sure that a recording of today's webinar is sent to you within 3 business days. We've got this incredible panel with us. As you can see, artists who have created blockbusters, artists who've created award-winning films. These are all artists with a great pulse on the audience, the Indian film audience, and we're all here united in our love for the movies. Besides the panelists from the Indian film industry, we've got Artura Guillen from ComScore, my friend and favorite person in Spain, joining us all the way from Madrid. And a shout out to the support of ComScore's technical team, headed by Ferry Gitzel, Iva and Beck Jensen, the team who are helping with the logistics for this webinar from ComScore, Reston, Virginia. So folks, thank you so much for joining. To all the panelists. I want to start just with a collective doff of our hats to the 2 great artists we lost last week, Irfan and Rishi Kapoor. Just saying thank you to for the stories, for all the movies that they gave us. And honestly, I also want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for the joy that you've given us, for the entertainment that you've given us. We took it all for granted. I'm not going to lie, we did. But please know that each one of you, we appreciate you even more now. I think if there's anything getting us through this, it is art. It is the stories that we hear, that we're telling each other, that we're telling ourselves. And so it's very important that we figure a way out through this, because the movies are, are just so vital to our experience. Last week, I was talking to Karan Johar, and he said to me that artists by nature are optimists. But at this point, we have to be realists, and we have to understand it's no longer about growth, it's about survival. So tell me, what is your biggest concern right now? What do you see as the big stumbling block to the film industry finding a way out of the situation that we're in right now?
I think the major concern for me is man's inability to come to terms with this fact that he doesn't know a damn thing. And the fact is that in spite of all the data that you had in your arsenal, nobody saw this coming. And we are at the moment, mankind seems to be like, we're looking for a black cat in a dark room, which is not there. We do not have the humility to say we don't know. It's a dark night, and we are like savages hiding in our caves, getting scared of the thunder. So I think what is very important, that the bluff and the bluster of the leaders, which we can see is wearing off now. Their body languages are changing. They, like all of us, had taken for granted this is going to be one smooth ride. But suddenly, you have been stopped in your tracks. I think it is, we can make a beginning when you're lost in a dark jungle. You need to stop and use this moment of what is called lockdown to pause and reflect. And go to that center if you have one, and understand the life that is playing out around you. Because one thing is important, Anupama, is the world is shattered. And when you go back to tell the stories to a shattered world, you require new stories, because the fragility of life and the inevitability of death is something which is staring at each one of us, irrespective of the age you are in, belong to, or which part of the world you are in. So I feel that But the optimistic thing is that in moments of great uncertainty comes great creativity. So in the darkest hours, the storytellers pull out from their hearts great stories. But those stories cannot be simplistic and optimistic. They have to ingest the bitterness that life has hurled at you. And having ingested that, tell a new story which is laced with hope, because mankind will survive. It has survived for centuries, for billions of years. So we are just a blip on this rudder of time. But I think the most important thing is to find out, to come to terms with one thing, that we don't know a damn thing. The crystal ball has been snatched away from all of us. And anybody who says that he has got the answer, he is bullshitting to you, because the reality is changing in a blink of an eye out there. Things are changing, and you cannot, you can talk about a river which is flowing and say that, look, I don't know where it will go. But when you claim to take just a bucket of water from there and say, I've understood the river, it's arrogance. You don't know what's going on. And that's what I think let's be humble enough to say we don't know, and then get together like people concerned and sit around the campfire. That's what we're doing. Like our ancestors would have sat down around campfires and discussed about the dark night and the dangers that lurk out there. I think that's what we are trying to do. So I would like to listen to my colleagues who are there. They're all unique people, and try to understand what they are seeing from their perspective.
Anyone else? What are you feeling? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I agree with Bhatt in the aspect of saying that we should be realistic in saying that we don't know. That's absolutely sure. We don't know. But one thing I'm sure, the river has changed its course. It's going to be, but the art of storytelling will remain until the last person on the earth is wiped off. The art of storytelling will survive. We just don't know what the tools are, what the audience are, what kind of stories they are going to listen. But only thing is, we have to be on our toes. We have to adapt for the change. Unless we go into the specifics, I think broadly that is what it is.
Anjali, you're writing your movie right now. You're in the period of creating the next film. So do you think that a story now necessarily has to incorporate the pandemic?
Not the pandemic necessarily, but I would definitely say the learnings and the experience of what we're going through at some level should come in, because we're surviving through a period which will render us different from where we were before this. And that kind of learning should definitely, that should enter our writing. I think that's very important, because we can't just go back to making the same kind of films or doing it exactly the same way. It would be no point then. But what is it? Each of us is experiencing this very differently, and each of our regions are experiencing it differently. I'm really keen to understand from everybody on the panel how they're processing it, not just in terms of their creative work, but beyond artists. We are also citizens. We're also responsible people. We're part of the industry. So how are we helping our industry grapple with it? And our industry is not just about technicians and actors, but also a whole lot of people who survive on daily wages. I think it's important for us to look at the housekeeping aspect of it as well, beyond just being artists. That is what really, really concerns me at this moment. More than the future, I'm really concerned about the present. What is happening with people who work on our units? I'm very concerned about that.
Anybody else? Suresh, so what?
Yeah,
Vikram.
Sorry. No, I was I think just repeating what Rajamouli sir, Bhatt sir and Anjali is saying. I think the uncertainty, because at this point in time, we don't know, because there's a trickle-down effect on everything, right? Like, when the theaters open, what are the box office collections of those films? Will those start to affect budgets? Those budgets, do they start to affect the bottom line of films? Can you now scale up? Do you have to scale down? Do you have to scale differently? Do you have to skew differently? Like Bhatt Saab says, what is the audience going to watch beyond this? Is there has to be a new kind of thing? Do you have to go back? Is there going to be a recession, which then leads to a whole different kind of movie making and a thought process that the audience is coming to see. So really, at this point in time, it's all like wait, watch. I'm extremely concerned as well about like if the cast where it's always that no, people will come back to this. Sure, they will, but what numbers, and therefore what's the trickle down effect? Therefore, what happens to the workers? Because we've all got so used to a system of such fine profit margins that you're pushing to the extremes every single time, and now is the one time you have to pull back. And you can't keep those extremes running. You have to be able to pull back and say, okay, how do we? So on the optimistic side, yes, we will work harder on our story. We will go out there and create something genuinely unique, because it's a we keep complaining for so many years. India never had a war, so we can't really make war stories. But now the whole world literally has seen the same incident, which sort of like drives a very common set of storytelling all around the world. Maybe something very beautiful to come out of that, and you'll be able to, in a smaller world, you can tell stories of more commonality. But really, I don't think for the next 2 to 3 months, any of us are going to have any sort of idea as to concrete steps or concrete thoughts or concrete do we scale up, scale or what? Interesting times.
To me, Anupama, see, I'm really still grappling at the way different people are addressing it. One side, you see the politicians all over the world. Nobody has a clue whether they're really doing the right thing. Are they doing the politically right stuff? What is it that they're fighting? You really I'm still failing to understand. They're all really big leaders with great teams around them. And then if you look at the people reacting differently. You open a wine shop, you have lakhs of people running to the wine shops. You let the migrant labor go. They're not worried. They want to go back. In a country like America, as soon as it starts, they go around buying guns and toilet paper. See, has this real problem come across? Has it really leveled and told us what this problem is? Is it a larger virus which is going to just put us into some difficulty and few of us are going to die? Or is it that many millions are going to die? Do we still understand it? And nobody is clearly telling us whether it's the virologists or whatever. So with that uncertainty, and from an industry point of view, there is a struggle within us that we have a desire and we wish that we want to open up very quickly. But at the same time, we are very cautious. What will be the safety of our workforce? What will be the safety of the audience? So we are in that the discussions always go on both sides. Every day you get a tweet saying that Sweden has opened some cinema theater there, somebody is opening up something here, and then they're shutting it down. So it's like a confusing time. So I've been telling people in our circle, let's, at least for Indian film industry, we'll go the wait and watch policy. Let's wait, let's see what's happening in the other countries, what lessons we have to learn, and then see how we really have to open at the right time, so that the day we open, we will have people running into the cinema theaters like they ran into the wine shops. Let's not go through another bad time. You had a bad time, let it continue. And then when it comes back, let it come back big time good one day. Like Rajamouli's Bahubali, everyone's full everywhere. Let that happen.
Yeah. No pressure on you, Rajamouli sir. you have to get everyone back into the theaters. Nag, what are you thinking?
I think that's a great image of people running back to theaters, like how they went to the wine shops. I was imagining that in the school. I think we're just adapting. We're just watching and I think this is the only time where it's so obvious that we as a society or whatever has to choose between economics and humanity, because like sir said, how many people are going to die? Like what is that's going to happen? We don't know. But like from whatever we know that nothing can be done without a vaccine for a while, and that means you have to make a choice. You have to make a balance about opening up, like how they opened up wine shops for money. Because the governments, they don't have any more money, the revenues are running low. So it's the first time as humanity, as a society, we're going to have to choose between, like very obviously, without any masks, we're going to have to choose between people dying versus the economy crashing.
So, Rajamouli sir, you did an interview in which you talked about the fact that by the time theaters do open up, audiences will have consumed even more on streaming platforms, right?
Yeah.
They'll be watching and consuming constantly for 60 days or longer. And you said, so expectations that the audience has from movies might in fact be higher, but our budgets will be tighter. Now, how does a filmmaker, face a challenge like that? How does a filmmaker meet a challenge like that?
No, I said all these are assumptions. We see, for us to give one concrete idea of how we are going to move forward, we need one constant. Here, there is no constant. Everything is a variable. We don't know when the theaters are going to open up, the cinemas are going to open up. Even if they open up, we don't know what kind of restrictions are going to be there. Even if there are some 50%, 33% audience only to be filled into a theater, even if we say that, we don't know how ready the audience are ready to come out into a public place. And for all this to happen, even if the theaters are open and if they're running, the rules are relaxed, for the people to get over this fear and come to the theater, it might take some time. So let's assume a year. 1 year for everything to go back to normal. In the sense, it's never going to be the same normalcy again. It won't be that, but just some kind of normalcy. Let's assume a 1 year. So in this 1 year or 8 months or 6 months, whatever, people will be consuming a lot of online content. There is so much content which is there, which people will be viewing, and they will be finding a different taste. They will be evolving. I won't say for better or worse or anything, but it's a change of their taste, the kind of content that they're going to view. So by the time they come back to the theater, which they will, not because we are making great films, that's what I said. It's not. People come to the theater not because we make great films, because being a social animal, they would like to emote with his fellow beings. That is the main reason cinema survives. So by the time they come back, they have a different taste. They have grown, for better or worse. They're a different set of audience. So if we don't give content which is up to their standard, into the new standard, obviously they are going to reject it. So there will be many more new filmmakers who are going to come with new content. There will be numerous filmmakers who are going to come with different kind of content, and also there will be filmmakers who are still hanging on to the old ideas. So everything is a variable. We don't know what's going to happen immediately. So we have to be on our toes. We have to be ready to face the challenge. That's what I meant by saying that.
Got it. So, Bhatt, you've been making movies since the 70s. Tell me, just, of course, nobody has ever faced this situation, but just from the many decades of experience, how quickly can an artist adapt? How quickly do you change to kind of respond to this situation?
Anupama, one couldn't have survived for 50 years in this business which doesn't allow you a weekend without continuously reinventing yourself and deconstructing yourself and moving away aggressively from your certainties. So I only know one thing, that when we were in our infancy, my father came from the world of movies, and he made stunt movies and mythological movies and people's movies. They used to talk about the wartime when the raw stock would come by ships, and they would wait for the stock to come, and then they would get a ration of raw stock, and then they would shoot. So the golden age of Indian cinema, the 50s, was built on the shoulders of people who had seen the freedom struggle and had seen the post-war and had experienced the austerity and the kind of harsh realities of life. That's why they birthed movies which came from a tremendous space of empathy in them, right? And because we were brought up in a culture which said, deny, save, share. Deny, save, share. And India changed. So movies changed. So I think this is a very unusual time where you will be forced to, as Anjali was saying, she's more concerned about not her own future as an entertainer, but it cannot be unstitched from your concern for your fellow human being, your worker, your technicians, because unless an artist is firmly rooted in the world that he lives in, he cannot cannot even have the right to call himself an artist. An artist is very much a part of the world. He's not some privileged entity living somewhere up there. So I think most important thing that will happen to us is, as Rajamouli was saying, that the movies, it's not the amount of movies that they will see in the next 6 months. It's the amount of life they will introspect. They are being forced to go into a space which they've been running away from. You know, my concerns are that after the pandemic of the virus, you're going to have a wave of mental illness, and we are not even ready. There are suicides, there is anxiety attacks, there is post-traumatic disorder, there's depression. And to tell stories to a wrecked up world is not an easy job, but it was the plague and the Great Depression and the World War that created a chaplain. So I would say that the great filmmakers do come out of the womb of darkness, but you cannot bypass this painful phase. You will have to lock eyes with this darkness. If you try to run away from the pain, you'll surely die. You will have to confront this pain. And when you confront this pain, automatically there will be a compassionate gene in you which will be kindled. And storytellers are nothing but, they are fairer gods. You know, they give to you what life doesn't dish out to you. We give you happy endings which life may not give you. That's why people come to us repeatedly looking for fixes. So I think that's what will remain, as Rajamouli was saying, that there will be continuous, like medicines are needed, storytellers are needed, because today there is more tearing need to process and understand the world that we're living in. Nobody is comprehending. I think what is really graceful about this gathering is everybody is saying we don't know what is going to happen. Unlike the politician, we don't have to wear that kind of a hat and say we know all the answers. It's such a relief to find people who say, I don't know. Because I think if art is not born in humility, then where else it is born? And I think it is our unsure, dark moments that actually have contributed largely to your career. When I look back at my 50 years, it's when I was cocksure and certain, I made the worst films of my career. And when I was down there in the dumps, in the darkness, something came out of me to survive. I think that will well happen to mankind. That's what I feel.
That's lovely. How do you tell stories to a wrecked world? Any thoughts, people? How do you tell stories to a wrecked world?
What a difficult question that was. How do you tell a story to the wrecked world? Please, Vikram, please go ahead.
No. So you were saying, I was basically going to say that I think we're all going to figure it out. I think our writing is going to evolve itself over the next 6 months, 1 year, maybe 2 years. We'll be evolving our own writing because we're confronting our own emotions, with what's going on over here. I was having a conversation with somebody else, and Zia Janke wrote a beautiful letter. I think it was on the net a couple of weeks ago, where he's talking about he feels like a new filmmaker. He's so nervous when he's now shooting with this iPhone and in this kind of scenario. And I certainly, and it's true for a lot of us, for us who've been brought up in a world where you're used to the 100, 150 people on set. How do you now change that entire thing to a whole different kind of filmmaking and a whole different kind of story writing process, and the limitations now put on you are entirely different. I was joking with somebody that is going to lead to a lot of lonely cinema coming out right now, because that's kind of how everybody feels. If you're it's you and your family, and that's pretty much it. So is that all? Is that what is going to teach us over the next thing, that we write stories about us and our family, and the longing of wanting to have social stuff? I don't know. I'm also, because this is the time in the moments you're sitting back and saying, what do I want to write now? What is it that I'm actually sort of sitting down on the keyboard and saying, what is it that I want to really say? And I don't know as yet. I don't know if everybody else knows.
I don't know.
Anupama ji, don't get us wrong in thinking that we are completely lost when we say we don't know. We don't think that we are depressed and down. Right. In fact, to be very frank, I'm excited. I mean, not because the pandemic that's happening around. Obviously, that is very sad situation. Apart from that, as a storyteller, we are facing a big challenge, and I'm excited to take on that challenge. Many of us will fall down. Many of us will get up. Some of us will not get up, but we'll get up. We'll fall down again. We'll get up. But let me tell you, this is an exciting challenge. It's not a depressing challenge. This is not we are completely lost kind of challenge.
Right.
It's just at present we just don't know what the tools we have in our hand to survive. Just as we start grasping, understanding the tools that we are going to have, be sure that we are going to come at you.
Absolutely. I'm relying on all of you to find the tools and come at us. Suresh, sir, let me come to you. You wear so many hats. You're a studio owner, you're a producer, you're a distributor, you're an exhibitor. You have several stars in your family. In all of these areas, what do you think should be the film industry's first concern? What do we fix? Like Anjali talked about the daily wage workers. What do we do right now? And immediately?
See, what the charity part of it is going on. Wherever possible, we've been able to help the film workers. Each industry is sort of formed some kind of charitable thing, and they're giving them some provisions and stuff like that. Now, that is going to last a month, 2, 3. That's okay. And what we don't know is when is it that we are going to open. See, that reality people are not willing to really face. Now, are the theaters going to open in 6 months? I have told my office it might be even 12 months. Let's be ready. I don't see why we should open in 6 months and why it could be even early next year that we will have to start opening. They might force us in. Now, are all of us in that, all the stakeholders, are we ready to face it? Is what we really have to see. Many of us, like Rajamouli was saying, are going to get dropped out in this race. Whether you're a studio owner, whether you're an exhibitor or a distributor, if you don't have the resilience, if you don't have the capability to stay, somebody is going to acquire you, or you're going to just leave that business and go away. The way I'm seeing the industry come back is probably if again, assuming that Corona is going to be as mild, or it's in less than that 1% death ratio is going to be there, then probably the post-production will start first. Post-production for cinema, television, and OTT will start first. Work will start in that. Then probably some production for the smaller units, movies that want to finish and go on to OTTs, television, soaps, and serials, which can be done with a limited crew. Again, there, will the actors want to come in and work? The fear of getting the disease, the stigma of getting the disease, how are the actors going to really face it? Now, are we going to have different plans of, if somebody wants to shoot a film, I have a 50-member crew, I go to a shooting location like a hotel, everybody is tested, you stay within that campus, you're like assigned housing, and all of us stay there, make the film, and then come back. Are people going to rush and do films like that? So, number of ideas and plans are coming up from different parts of the world on how we should start to get back. But all these, we'll have to try and see and check out what is happening in different countries. And then we can come up with a model. Because however big we are, we don't have great habits of hygiene on our locations generally.
Yeah.
We really need to now understand why it is so important, and that has to get into everybody in the unit. Probably the people at the top might be there, from the light boy, from the production boy. How are we going to follow that protocol? That I don't care attitude, kuch nahi hota hai, my body is full of alcohol, now alcohol will do nothing to me. We speak in very casual terms. So how is the industry going to get rid of the old bad habits that we have? We had a lot of bad habits. In those bad habits, sanitizing ourselves, hygiene is one bad habit that we definitely have to clear up. And then the creators will probably make films much smarter. They will be much more prepared. We'll work like something like what an international unit is supposed to work at. your scripts are much more bound, you've done your storyboarding properly, your short division is all done, and then there is less of on the sets kind of work for efficiencies to happen. So if you take in terms of damage, I see that the exhibition and the distribution sector are going to be the damaged lot for the longest period of time. Probably the actors, technicians, and the workers might find work elsewhere. This is the extreme situation. If for 1.5 years we still can't go back and can't go back into theaters, then what is our position? Then many of us will start making material for OTT, coming and telling stories, maybe telling animation stories, visual effects and animation stories. That could become a possibility. A lot of stories that could be predominantly done on the table with some live action. Like you start making movies within the studio, like 300, get a big film like that, but do it within a controlled environment. So every day you have ideas. So sometimes you want to be very positive in what you think, but then there's enough negativity that keeps coming and keeps putting you down. So it's just still the balance is on.
Now you about to embark on a very ambitious film. Your last film, Mahanati, won many accolades, including the National Award. Your next is a multilingual sci-fi mega budget project with Prabhas. How does this impact both on the story, on the actual content of it, and the budgeting?
I mean, nothing. I don't think it'll affect the story because that's something that's already formed. But it'll definitely change our approach. I feel like I think right now people won't even take a single day of shooting for granted. Like it's not even like everything is, because everything's so uncertain. We make sure you get the most out of everything, and even the way that you approach releases and the way that you approach scheduling a film, scheduling certain scenes, everything, there will be absolutely no room for error because we've seen that everything can just shut down in a day. So I think that story-wise, because I'm not starting writing now, so I don't think the effect of that would effect of the pandemic would fall upon it. Maybe subconsciously it would definitely, and it is a bit of a dark sort of piece. So. But yeah, I think it's definitely us not taking anything for granted. I think that's what all of us as an industry, not just films, I think everybody not take a single day for granted.
Anjali, do you see any way we can at least get some good to come out of this? Like you talked about not taking it for granted. Rajamouli sir said we'll take up the challenge. But do you think the storytelling will become more efficient, the actual shoot will become more efficient? Maybe we kind of rethink parts of the narrative, like marketing. And part of my life is doing promotional interviews, and I know that actors just hate them. And still, we all participate in the circus. I ask the questions, they give the answers, we just keep doing it. Are we going to rethink all of this?
See, like everybody is saying, we don't really know, but my guess would be that there will be a streamlining of resources, because we've always looked at certain resources as precious. But, when it comes to people, or especially in India, when it comes to the number of people working on set, when it comes to the certain time that we take, the hours we work, the conditions we work in, a lot of this has been taken for granted. And I think those resources will be looked at again, and there will be a certain streamlining if we remember the lessons of all of this. In fact, it is in a way good, because it gives us time for reflection about our form of working. Is this really efficient? Is this the way it should be made? And also to look at content about when a certain story should actually get the mounting it deserves. Every story does not have to be mounted in the same way. Some of them are so strong on the script that even with a very limited kind of mounting, it can do extremely well. And I think that kind of recognition is also something that we will hopefully make. I work in Kerala predominantly, and I have the privilege of being exposed to different kinds of cinema coming out of the same space. And I hope that happens all over. But the silver lining, in a very tiny silver lining, but it's there. I think we have to acknowledge that this has been a time when we have all watched movies from all over the world, from all over the country. We're really getting to see one another's cinema. And that is very special. And I hope our sensibilities also get affected that way, because what Bhatt sir was saying and what Suresh sir was saying is that kind of thing, that it's important for us to acknowledge what is going on, and then when we generate content after that, that's bound to be enriched by that experience. So I count that as a huge silver lining, being able to watch so much and reflect upon what kind of work we do.
You know, according to media reports, Netflix gained 16 million subscribers in the first 3 months of this year. Disney Plus has 50 million plus subscribers all over the globe. Vikram, you were among the first to go to streaming with Sacred Games. I'm hearing, at least in Mumbai, in the last month or so, that increasingly even the filmmakers who were resistant to streaming platforms are now sending feelers, are saying, okay, we're open to this. How do you think storytelling will change? How will the business change with this kind of move to streaming?
Eventually, I think it'll be the same. Look, I just think that I always end up looking at, and I know they've been wonderful creative partners, but I think that when you look at Netflix and Amazon as being a distribution model, which is being able to take your content day and date to multiple countries where people can watch it. So you're not having to deal with on the one side the Friday mafia and the problems that you normally have with show timings and all that sort of stuff that every indie filmmaker, most filmmakers face, unless you're coming out with a huge film. There is one part of it is looking at Netflix and Amazon that way, saying that yes, it takes you. You interviewed, I remember Brad Pitt once when he came down for War Machine, and there's one thing he said that day which is stuck in my head, where the fact that he said, yes, we all love the movies. How many of your favorite movies have you actually seen in a movie theater? And that makes you sort of like think about the fact that I love going to the movie theater and seeing movies, but I also look at the fact that okay, if you just say that it's just a distribution model that we're doing that. Having said that, it still does change a lot of stuff. Rajamouli sir said that yes, we are social people who like to go to the theater, and that's exactly the thing. And it takes away some of the social part of filmmaking. It's not quite the same as going to a movie theater to watch something. So I think it might change a little bit in terms of the fact that we like to tell the stories, and people still like to watch the stories that we're going to tell. I don't think it's going to change drastically in terms of the way we're approaching our stories. I don't think it's that. I think it's just about a lot of filmmakers being able to mentally screw themselves to the fact that you're making it there's a potential that someone will watch it on a phone as opposed to watching it on some. Extraction is a full-on blockbuster, big screen type film, but it was made for Netflix, and it's gone and broken every record that Netflix potentially had. I don't think anything has changed in that sense. I just think it's about us being able to look at it as a slightly different distribution model, and I think it's a good opportunity. I honestly do. I think it's a great opportunity for us to actually better a lot of our storytelling, because you're actually taking it, bigger and broader.
Arturo, you've been listening to all of us very quietly. As the global managing director of ComScore, which is of course measuring box office around the world, you're in touch with studios, you're in touch with exhibitors, distributors, everywhere. Tell me, what is the current thought process in other parts of the world? What kind of policies, what kind of ideas are being discussed for entertainment?
So at the beginning, what we saw was obviously, as everywhere else, like a lot of panic on what was going on. People trying to adapt and to understand the threat that we were facing. And as in India, it's been a very difficult month. We've seen companies around the world furloughing people because we've gone from we're only one of the few industries that have come to zero revenue. So the global movie industry in theaters generated last year $42.5 billion, and it went from one day to another to zero. We should have seen coming? Looking at, because we were looking at China having the theaters closed and canceling their New Year. So we should see this coming. But the truth is that we didn't. We've never faced a threat like this, where it becomes almost like a perfect storm. We are threatened not just by an event like a terrible event like the pandemic or the economic crisis that we're going to face, but also by potential substitutors of the movie experience. I actually feel this is all an opportunity, because it will generate exactly the opposite effect once this is over, right? People will consume everything that they want to consume in streaming or online, and then they will want to, as Suresh was saying, they will want to consume in a social way back into the cinemas. I don't know what's going to happen, as Mahesh was saying. I do know through data what's happening and what happened just before this whole thing started. We've seen many times before people announcing the death of cinema, so this is not new to any of us, right? But this year, after being the biggest year ever in 2019, this year was well ahead last year. So France, except for France and Mexico, the UK was like 20% ahead of last year. The US was around 10% ahead last year. So it was still maintaining a solid growth. So the question is not whether people or audiences still want to engage in a theater to consume a movie. It's how this is going to change it, knowing that appetite still exists. Let me share with you something. Last year, CinemaCon, which is the biggest event for Hollywood motion picture and US exhibitors, they get together in Vegas for a week. And I had the honor to open up the show with a keynote. And I started it showing a small little clip of an audience in Chennai before a movie from Rajnikant, Secret Superstar. And you could see the audience going like, well, when I go to a meeting in Hollywood, one of the studios, I still get asked about that short 20 seconds clip, saying, is that real? Did that actually really happen? I said, no, these things happen. This thing is actually normal in India. We are the Western world. We're amateurs when it comes to delivering cinema. You guys are the experts. I'm just hoping that you're able to make it global. So look, that passion is there. It's just how that's going to change and how we're going to adapt to it. But I think there's no doubt that will, we'll see a golden era once this is over.
Tell me, this is one of the things that I heard, that filmmakers in the South are less anxious than filmmakers in Mumbai, because they're sure that when theaters open, the stars will actually pull people back in. Is that true?
Was that question for me, Anupama ji?
No, please respond.
No. No, I didn't ask. I mean, your voice got cut in the beginning, so I didn't understand whether you were asking anyone.
And so I would love for you to respond. I was just told that, filmmakers in the South are a little more confident than all of us here in Mumbai. We're more anxious about it because the star power in the South is perhaps bigger.
I don't know. For me, a star is the same whether it's in North, South, or America or anywhere. The star is the same. I don't think it's any different. It's just how the audience receive them. Maybe a little bit more vocal or a little bit more vibrant. That's it. But in the heart, it is the same. They watch it. I was continuing a little bit on what Vikram said before. If you as an example, I'm just telling you as an example. If you take, let's say, for example, you have the opening shot of Salman Kaur or Rajnikant or some superstar. The opening shot is just getting into a boxing ring, opening his shirt or something. You see the rippling muscles, and when you watch that, you don't care why he's doing that or for what purpose he's doing that. The moment you see that in the theater, the people are going to shout, scream, throw papers, or whatever they're going to experience it. And when you are in the theater, you're going to experience that euphoria, right? So you have a certain viewing experience when you watch that, but you watch the same thing on an OTT platform, on your personal device, or on a TV. You're not going to get the same experience. You're the same person, who enjoyed it in the TV, in the film theater, is not going to enjoy it the same way. So he will be asking like, what else is there? What else is there? So probably if the scene is changed, something like that, the same Salman Khan has to win that bout, so has to get that 100 rupees or whatever, 1,000 rupees, whatever, so he can go back and feed his hungry child. So there is a story behind it. So then the story is going to sell, of course, depending on how well you make it. That's always there. Then there's a story, not just showing your rippling muscles, but adding a story to that. So that's going to sell on an OTT, even if you are on a personal device watching it. So what I'm saying is, when people are going to watch on OTT platforms, the present content won't give you just a theater kind of experience. So you're going to get a story experience for this, that's the Corona times. So once you get used to that kind of storytelling in this Corona times, when you come back, then you need to have a story. Just opening of rippling muscles is not going to fetch you the audience. Just because you have a superstar, you won't be selling your story. Initially, yes, they will be pulling the audience. That is only the openings that will always be there, but that is not enough to sell your product. You need to have something else to sell your product.
Yeah. So we'll have to have the rippling muscles and a story, which is perhaps the best combination.
Obviously, yes.
Sir, you also said in an interview that perhaps because of this, stars might have to reconsider their paychecks, and which would be wonderful. But I've been reporting from the trenches for more than 20 years, and I've never seen that happen. Do you all think that's actually going to happen? Are actors going to maybe take salary cuts?
See, first thing we should clearly understand is the simple economics is the person who is going to pull the audience to the theater is going to the maximum beneficiary. Okay, that's as simple as that. But during this, the first thing that's going to be shaved off is the luxury. So if you're having your star in your project as a luxury, then the remuneration is going to be slashed. It doesn't matter how it's going to happen. The luxuries have to be shaved off. If your star's remuneration is a luxury, then it's going to cut. But if in your story, the star is the main audience pulling factor to the film, then his remuneration won't be cut. As simple as that.
But sir, Suresh sir, do you see that happening as people who also have stars in the family?
Well, I think what Rajamouli is saying is that the entourage economy is going to get a blow, because a star coming with 8 people, 10 people is going to end.
And about time, I think.
You see, we made movies with 3 assistants, and there were no luxurious vanity vans which we looked for a tree and sat down and made movies, and we made great movies. And our ancestors made even greater movies without all these things. I think if times compel you, you'll have to deliver within the means that are provided to you. But the essence of this, what I'm hearing from everyone is, everybody is actually saying that the superficiality will be ripped off. You will have to give the audience stories, understanding that the audience consciousness has been radically altered by these harsh, unforgiving times where they have looked at life in the eye. Their personal lives are changed. You can't go to funerals now. We had 2 funerals, Anupama. They were all very dear ones. We couldn't go. We had to see them on video. So I feel our personal lives are changing. People are having heartbreaking stories. So when you go through these kind of horrible, anguishing times, and the leaders that you have looked up to don't deliver, the painkiller of religion is not working. Most of the religious sites are shut down. The Vatican is shut down. The Holy Kaaba is shut down. The temples are shut down. the movie hall was shut down. So the audience is being forced to look inwards. And when you look inwards, there will be the tone and tenor of storytelling will change. But yes, there would be, and the heart of it, there would be what Rajamouli said. The essence will be empathy. What we need to understand that the man's concern for his fellow human being will come to the forefront, because if at all anything that's going to see us through this pandemic is each other, we holding each other's hand. Gone are those days when we look up to the leaders. The leader needs to be more than just a leader. He needs to be a healer. And I think storytellers are great healers. We tell stories which heal. And that's why people go again and again and again watch our movies. I think that will change. The tone and tenor of our movies will change. And I think the dark times, all great art comes from the womb of suffering. All great political movements. So suffering has been the bedrock on which the entire culture stands. As of now, we are grappling, but I'm certain, as he said, these are not depressed times. These are times which are going to test our core. And the real guys will stand up and alter themselves and meet the challenge headlong. And those who can't, they will have to give up gracefully and make way for those who can.
Suresh, sir, anything to add?
See, it's as far as the economics of the stars and technicians and the entourages go, it will be in relation to what the end product is going to be collecting. See, it's like indirectly, what is it that the producer brings onto the table for him to take back something? If the star and the director and the writer, they're bringing in much more, they will take in much more. In the earlier days, the producer took much more because he was taking all the risks. If now there is not going to be a buyer, then he gets to make more. But now if you're doing a lot of these pre-sales and all that, so his value on the table is very little. So it's going to be, that will be the proportion. And it's not that we have to get overly worried about that being the issue. That will sort of, it'll find its own level very soon. They all understand, or they will not understand. It is just like how they are now. There are enough stars who understand and they see that the project goes through smoothly. And there are some stars who are very selfish and see that everything comes to themselves. Even now we have stars who take money only at the end of the film. There are some stars who take everything right at the beginning of the film. So they just want, there are that kind of compassion of whatever they want for the project will continue to be there. I'm not so worried about that. It's the discipline of the whole industry. The habits, the bad habits breaking and bringing in efficiencies is what we really have to work on.
Yeah, Vic?
If I may just sort of, I think what's going to, a lot of us, and this is a call that you and me were on yesterday, which is a separate, the trickle-down effect of what's going to eventually happen in terms of the economics. Now, the thing is that we all know, we've all always complained about the fact that our crews are too big on a set, right? We have 4 people with the camera, and we have 6 people with the crane, and we have 3 people on makeup, and all that sort of stuff starts to happen. The unions sort of like work. Now, how do all the producers and all the unions at some point in time need to get together to figure out, okay, we can't have that many people on set. How do we reduce? But at the same point in time, you need more productions to take place to be able to spread, those people across. And there is going to be an opportunity, 100%. There are films that have not finished. I'm sure in this 4 months, people have created more work. There's going to be a lot to make, and there's going to be a lot to watch. But it has to be, we've never been an industry that's actually worked together. We've always been a little factional about our sort of stuff. This is the time for us to come together to really discuss these kind of things, to talk to the unions, to figure out how do we, with all our daily wage workers, how do we spread them across productions? How do we limit our size of productions, but spread them across? How do we figure out new ways of working? Why do we need 4 people with every camera? There's all those questions we've always asked on our heads, scratching our heads. This is the time to actually put that into practice. I feel we should use this opportunity as the industry to really just make our practices better.
Yeah, absolutely. Anjali, I want you to talk to me a little bit about what happens to the mid-budget film. What happens to the not the event movie, not the tentpole movie. That's one of my concerns. Is does it become automatically that the mid-budget film goes to streaming because we aren't sure that audiences will come? What happens to those movies which are more personal, which are, telling more personal stories?
And see, I don't have the answers, but I would imagine that until we arrive at a new normal, that would be a big part of the case. That would definitely happen, especially when you have character-driven films which are not set up in that big way, which can recover their monies also from a deal like that. Then I think yes, that would definitely be the way to go. But like everybody's saying, in Daniel Goleman's Social Intelligence, that book, he says beautifully how every audience member takes away so much when you watch movie collectively, and how different it is when you watch it individually. And that experience is something that I think our audience, me as an audience, I'm missing that. So that will definitely pull us back into the theaters. But I think there will have to be, we have to think of it as until we get back into the theaters and before we get back into the theaters. I think we'd have to separate it that way and look at it, because it's not that from this point on everything's going to be away. We really don't know. Like when we started off, we said we really don't know which way this is headed. But in interim period, yes, possibly that is what will happen. But this kind of discipline which we really need to develop, this is really the time for policy changes, for reflection about how we work. I think we should be more concerned about our process at the moment than about our product.
But is that happening? Suresh sir, Rajamouli sir, Bhatt, do you see the sort of the seniors in your respective film industries talking to each other, trying to get some sort of blueprint into place?
Suresh.
Yeah, Rajamouli, go ahead. Yeah, we've been having meetings. We've been setting up some, we've come up with some protocols on where we could reduce and how we should do things. But these are all early drafts. But everyone is talking on that. Directors across the board. A lot of us are, a lot of producers, we have a small guild here. And all of us are trying to put down things that we need to do to make things more efficient. For the productions that we had, I said, okay, we have 25 days more. You think we'll need 25 more days? Or can you wrap it up in 20 days? Where are the efficiencies going to come out? So these small exercises are happening, but that's the problem with us. As a society, we never wanted to go for excellence. It's the few people who tried to achieve excellence have really made it. As an industry as a whole, though we do so much of work, we've never wanted to go in for that excellence in what we do. Finally, we have used the same cameras, we use the same sound systems, but still we are internationally below par overall. It's something that is not, probably the audience were accepting what we were giving, but we've seen that whenever quality has been given, people are appreciating it. I wish that we continue in that quest for excellence. Then the opportunity for our industry could become much larger also. We could be a hub of making films, like how we have international IT companies working in our country. We probably very soon will have productions coming up to our places and working. That should be the aim for the country, the governments to do, and try and see that we have a very efficient industry here. And the other question on the medium films, I'm just hoping that if the corona goes off, maybe 6 months later, 1.5 years later, and this work from home habit is going to become a bit of a natural for many of these IT companies. They're tasting blood in the way that they work from home. So if that really happens, I'm very, very confident that people will throng to the theaters. You can't sit and work throughout the day at home with your 5 kids around. The weekends will be a great time for movies, restaurants, pubs. People will just want to go out. So I'm just betting and hoping that that's going to be happening.
But do you all see the various film industries talking to each other, Malayalam exchanging sort of best practices with Hindi, with Tamil, with Telugu, Punjabi? How do we get this to happen in a way where people actually speak to each other and we find a common solution?
You get Anupama Chopra to do it. You managed to get all of us here, and we are talking.
No, Anupama, for the exhibitors, for the exhibition sector, the Multiplex Association, and actually tomorrow we have one on when should we open the theaters. Let's all talk and decide what is the right time to open. what cares we should take. We should not be too early or too late. So such discussions are happening in certain groups. Lot of national forums are now forming. People are now starting to talk amongst each other a little more than before. And then now on this sale on OTT, there are a lot of opinions now because there was a little bit of hue and cry when one Tamil film went directly to OTT, and then, so things are happening. It's just that they'll start picking up as time goes on, because we still don't know when this end is going to happen. But surely some of us are now trying to see that enough discussions are going to happen amongst ourselves before we take off.
Okay, I'm gonna go to audience questions, but before that, I'd love for each one of you to tell me the one thing that gives you hope at this point.
One thing that gives me hope is that man needs stories. Man is a story-consuming creature. He has always, since the Stone Age, sat around campfires and told stories. But through those stories, he has imparted knowledge about the world that he had lived through, about the dangers that are outside, so that the person who goes out to hunt the next day is armed with that information. I think that need is been the need which has fueled the world of storytellers since the dawn of time. And that will remain no matter what happens, because we need to tell stories. You yourself are nothing but a story. So we will need to tell stories, so that whether you tell it through on a smartphone or a 70mm screen, or you tell it on a big screen, that is something that times will decide. But that gives me hope that medicines and stories. There was a time when in the ancient India, when you went to a doctor for a physical ailment, he studied you and gave you a story to heal you. There was the healing was provided through a story. And that's what storytellers essentially are. So that gives me hope. But there's only one thing which is my major concern is the word hygiene that we have introduced here. You know, the people that we work with, our workforce, they come from a background when they live in abject poverty. When you talk to them about washing their hands and living a kind of a lifestyle, they don't understand what you're talking about, because they live in in unimaginable conditions. Now, when they rub shoulders with you on your set, then you will have to be concerned about their well-being. So one of those days where you feel that you're going to protect yourself, unless he is safe or she is safe, you will not be safe. So we need a world where we are going to look at everybody with the same gaze. Like that when the sun rises, it shines on the king and the beggar the same way. Unless we become that kind of a society and make some kind of a new beginning, I don't see how we're going to battle this problem.
Anyone else? Vikram, what gives you hope?
What Bhatt said, I think the desire for stories and the desire for the fact that there's going to be a time when we come back and as Suresh Babu also said, that we will all go back to the theater and just really enjoy ourselves and watch some amazing stuff. I think it's a bit of a bittersweet kind of thing that you want to go back to the way it was, but you want it to be better as well. But how do we actually make it better? Is the big question that all of us are facing right now. But so yeah, we want to go back to the bars and we want to go back to the movies and we want to go back to all of that sort of stuff, and that's what's giving you hope that the world will be okay all over again. But hopefully it's a better okay and not just an okay.
Yes.
A better okay.
We need a better okay. Nag, what about you?
I think it's going to be, like in a broken world, like how we started off, like how do you tell stories to a world that's broken? I think it's maybe that the broken world will be seeking stories. They'll seek some sort of escapism. They'll seek some sort of transformative experience, which comes really only from a theater experience, I feel. I mean, you can sit with headphones in your laptop and still have a very a great experience with a film. I can't deny that. But I think when you watch a film in a theater and it's a really good film, and like sometimes you just come out changed. And I think a lot of people will want to feel that after all this is over. And I think that the main function of film being entertainment, escapism, and some sort of transformation, I think all those three check boxes need to be ticked, and that's why people will come back. So I think that's hope, and I think that's what it's also a bit of responsibility, because you probably won't be making anything frivolous anymore. Or I mean, even if it is comedy, like it won't be frivolous. It'll be like making a small comedy film, and it's a choice of whether to release it to OTT. And the choice really was like, I think especially at a time like this, I would really want people to come to a theater and laugh together, because I think this is a responsibility, and I want people to come and laugh together. Like, of course, they can sit and watch at their homes on Netflix and watch it. Financially, it'll be fine if you release it on OTT. But I think as filmmakers, I think some of these things, they're a responsibility. I want to have people come and enjoy, even if it's like only 50% of the audience that normally turn up, but they'll go home laughing, and they go home wearing their masks and still laughing, though you can't see it probably.
Anjali, what gives you hope?
To be very honest, ever since the lockdown has started, I have been very moved by so much of feedback from the audience through the social media handles, everything about films that I've worked on years ago. And these are older members of the audience, newer people, everybody. And I think it's the audience that gives me hope. The pain they take to express exactly how they feel about scenes, about a song, about a character. There is so much content that is today being generated by the audience, which is about the movies we've made, and that I find an extremely moving thing. And that is really where my hope comes from. There is a lot of love for us.
There is. I started by telling you, we appreciate you more than you know.
That's the biggest source of hope for me at the moment.
Suresh, sir, what about you?
I was telling me, I know we have a dark patch, but the light at the end of the tunnel is there. There is light. It's not that there is not going to be light, and the light is going to be quite bright. A, audience are social beings. They will come out. B, we want stories always, like Batsab has been saying, and we'll get it. And C, I'm also happy with the new changes that will happen. Everybody's working from home. So we are going to be out. They're going to be out. Weekends will be a great time. Evenings. So I'm quite positive that if we are willing to wait it out, then we'll do well. We should not hurry and do things and then bring it to that negativity. You start shooting and then somebody gets it, you shut down again, you open the cinemas, then you again something happens, then you go back into a negative cycle. We should be very careful on how we time our entry back into this world. That's when we'll do very well.
Yeah. Not be short-sighted or greedy about this.
Yes.
Yeah. Rajamouli, sir?
I agree a lot with Batsab. Apart from our basic needs like food, air, and roti, kapda, or makan, after the basic things, entertainment is a necessity for human being, or a story is very much necessary for a human being. So as long as, because it's a basic necessary for human beings, we will be always in. We always will have work. The nature of our work might change in different ways, or it might not. We don't know, but we are always in business. So that gives me hope. And also personally, from my side, I always like a challenge. I mean, just as an example, if I'm shooting with some 500, 600 crew and something untowards happen, a set collapses, or like a sudden challenge comes up, I can feel my adrenaline rushing. I like a challenge. If something comes up, I immediately start thinking about how I can use it to my advantage. How can I still do something work? How can I still make it interesting? I'm always, more than a regular days of work, a challenging days of work always gives me my keeps my adrenaline rushing. And this is the biggest challenge that I ever faced. I'm super excited about it, in front. To be frank.
Artura, what about you?
So it gives me hope in two ways, emotional and as an industry. Emotionally, it gives me hope, I guess, the passion and the perseverance which all of you guide your steps towards storytelling. I guess none of you could stop from telling stories. And as long as that stays there, there will be audiences willing to consume them. Every storyteller that I've met around the world has the same kind of unstoppable desire of telling. So that will not stop. And from an industry point of view, going to data, Germany last weekend grossed $1.2 million only on drive-ins. When you see that's last weekend, 1.2, you know, it's the US drive-ins are fully booked. Costa Rica is opening cinemas this week. Spain will open at the end of May. France most likely at the beginning of June. Disney has set one of its blockbuster of the year is Mulan for end of July, and it is sticking to that. So that should be bringing us hope. Touching point with what Suresh you just said, we cannot have a mistake here. We need to learn from the mistakes of others. We all know what happened in China. When we open, we need to open for real, and we need to maximize our speed to go at full speed, avoiding the mistakes that others made. So I guess for all of you, and including and for myself, this has been a roller coaster. One day you think oh, it's gonna be dark. The day after. For the last week, I'm seeing very positive signs around the world. So, and India is one part of it.
I'll tell you one thing that gives me hope is that at some point RRR is going to arrive. So since we have Rajamouli sir here, I feel like we can't let him go without asking him to tell us something about the movie. Come on, sir, what can you tell us? Sir, something.
You're muted.
Before I go into audience questions.
Rajamouli, you're on mute, Rajamouli.
Sorry, this is the exact point where I can't reveal anything about the film because I have to make sure, I have to understand the pulse of the audience to gauge them how they are going to come for the movie. Only then I have to reveal anything about about RRR.
Not even this much, nothing. You will give us nothing.
Not at this point, please.
Okay, with that, I'm going to take a few audience questions. There is one here from Saurabh Shahasrabute who says, is releasing your movies directly on an OTT platform a profitable and viable option for movies that are currently lined up for release? I don't know, at what point does it become viable? I'm guessing for the big, really big ones, it's not viable. Anybody wants to take this question?
Okay, again, we can't say, we can't answer the question in general. Each project has a different budget, different stage of making. And again, it depends a lot on dealing with the OTT platforms. See, let's say certain percentage of your monies come from the theatrical release, and certain comes from the satellite and OTT platforms. Now, if you go to the, I mean, the discussion comes in such a way that see, I'm not going to release my film in the theater at all. I'm going to release direct to OTT platform. Then the deals might change. We don't know what it is at that point, but certainly for some films where we don't know when the theaters are going to open, releasing directly on OTT platform, for certain films, I think it will be viable.
So again,
the smaller ones will go first. The smaller films, which are not expecting too much from the theater, they will go in if the lockdown, it's the size of the film and the length of the lockdown. If the lockdown is going to continue for many more months, then you'll see a lot of mid-sized films also going away because the producer will have some financial issues with the product. So he might come off. But the large ones, I don't see them happening unless the OTTs really want to make a big bang and say, we want Suryavamshi on OTT, we'll pay you 200 or 300 crores or something like that. Or will they pay Vijay's Master 250 crore ticket and then come in. So it'll be timing and the money that they're going to give us.
So Balaji Velavan, and again, this is conjecture, but he says that people's perspectives will change drastically during these tough times, which of course all of you have talked about. What was considered important or significant before Corona might seem trivial after this. So are there going to be movies that were in production which might not be relevant once we're all back in theaters?
Bang on, I think it's a very important question, because I feel that it's suddenly you wake up and the fairy tales that you were brought up on have crashed, and they don't comfort. But you can't find comfort anymore. It's like a house that goes through a sudden death of a loved one, and now those narratives that kind of were cushioned you against the shocks of that are not working. So you will have to consume life in its rawest form. The superficiality will be ripped away, and you will have to tell stories with a certain amount of respect for the audience, meaning that their consciousness has radically changed, and it's at a global level. We have all experiencing what somebody's experiencing in Los Angeles, we're experiencing here in Chennai or in Mumbai. So I think, yes, we need to look at the stories that we make. Of course, provide that kind of a hopeful silver lining, but it cannot bypass the darkness of the times we are living through. It has to negotiate that. It's only when you negotiate it realistically and bring your own perspective on what is that perspective will differ from filmmaker to filmmaker. And it can't be from the graveyard of yesterday. The graveyards of yesterday will not fuel you anymore. Something has changed. And what has changed will be figured out by each filmmaker, each storyteller in his unique way. And that's where his distinct voice will come and make a difference.
Rajamouli sir, this one is for you. Jaydeva from Hyderabad says, could you please throw some light on how your unit for RRR is adopting, and have you changed your original script because of this situation?
Yeah, I'll answer that question, carrying a little bit from the previous one. See, 90% of our films were not relevant, whether it is Corona or not Corona. Right, even before that, 90% of the films were rejected outright by the audiences. Now, once we, I mean, that's it about it. And how we are adapting now for the new one is we are looking at what's the balance shoot that we have left, and the sequences wise, and we are making charts like what are the things that are needed for that. Do we need a large number of extras? Do we need some sets to be made? Is there any foreign cast or crew who are going to be needed for that particular sequence? Then we are looking in terms of how can we do that? No, obviously we cannot have large number of extras. So how can we shoot those sequences with a limited a number of extras, and how taking the maximum benefit of the VFX, how we can maximize the things. If the sets have to be made, now the set makers have to come from across the country. So we don't know, the interstate travel is not open yet. So we are trying to prioritize things, channelize things, which we can do with less number of people, less number of technicians, local technicians, local sets, everything, what are the sequences. So we are rescheduling things, and things which have more number of people, more number of foreign technicians or artists are taking a backseat in the sense, push to the end of the schedule, and rescheduling and trying to figure out. And also we are trying to figure out, everyone went to their homes. Now we are trying to figure out where the technicians, HODs or the low-end technicians, to figuring out where they are and when they can come back, and all these kind of things is what we are doing right now.
So here's an interesting one, people. Nishant is asking that, do you think after this, will people want to see more escapist films? Will they dominate? Or will people want to see sort of more personal films? What will an audience respond to? Will you want something just happy and escapist because life is so tough?
I think a bit of both.
See, I mean, how do you define escapism is the point. Unless there is some kind of personal connect, even in a very mass masala film, unless there is some kind of personal connect to the audiences, the film will not do well. No, many times, depending on our taste, we find to we tend to not to find it. I mean, depending on our taste, we don't find it. What's the personal connect, and we think, oh, it's just because it's a mass masala film, people are liking it. No, always there needs to be some kind of personal connect, emotional connect in the story, and it will be much more relevant now. That's my opinion.
Vikram, you were saying a bit of both.
Yes, I was saying there's a bit of both. I don't think, I think Bahubali will still work today. Whether it's the pre-corona world or the post-corona world, I don't think that really makes a difference to a really well-made big screen spectacle. I don't think any of that is going to change for that. And I think we've always, I'm saying, if you look at the indie film world or stuff like that, there is going to be a surge in an emotional film that you want to be able to sort of like have a certain connectivity. So I think there'll be all kinds of very, very interesting stories. I don't think there's going to be I think our cinema has anyway been escapist. So I don't see that changing at all. In fact, I think what I'm echoing what Rajamouli sir is saying is that you will have that personal connect will definitely need to be there both ways or any which way for us to be able to really enjoy the film.
Even in the bigger ones.
100%.
Okay, and Joel Varghese says that will there be lesser films with newer faces, new artists, new talents because of the current situation? It will be even riskier to be launching new faces. Do you guys see that happening?
I think it'll be the opposite, no? I mean, I think there's going to be so much content out there to be able to. It's already happening. I mean, you're going to have TV and streaming and the movies and all that sort of stuff, and there's just, I think anyway there's a limited amount of stars that I think there's going to be. I think personally, or maybe I hope, maybe it's more my hope coming out saying that I think there'll be newer people coming out there, but I think there's going to be. I hope there's going to be everybody.
Anyone else forecasting, looking into the crystal ball?
The story demands what kind of actors
I
you
think
need.
there are stories. Sorry. Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Can I? Okay. You see, there are stories that you listen to forget yourself, to escape yourself, and there are stories you listen to find answers to the problems you're grappling with. These have been the unique kind of stories that you have been seeing in your landscape. So I would say that the movies that have essentially, the moment you move away and say, I want to listen to a story, that means you are looking for some kind of a respite from yourself automatically. Why would you go and put on, go to a movie hall or put on your Netflix content if you did not want to get away from yourself? Because the hardest thing people are finding nowadays is to be with themselves. And that's why you're going to have these mental problems. So, but when you see content, you also look for a bit of yourself there, and you look for answers to your own personal problems. So I would say that while the stories are told essentially to escape from your burning reality, they will have to offer the viewer something more because his consciousness has radically changed. Like the packaging of the movies changed. There was a time when Indians settled for substandard VFX till Bahubali came, and then said, oh, now the yardstick is completely different. You will have to make the audience say that, look, it has at least matches of that. You can't settle for anything else. So I think that is the tone and tenor, I would say, has to be more authentic and real. But you see, as I kept on saying in the beginning, Chaplin came from those dark times, and he made movies which were escapist. But if you look at any Chaplin clip today, the serious content that is embedded in his so-called funny film is unmatchable. You can't match it. It's awesome.
Yeah. Anjali, you were saying something?
I think this also offers the opportunity for smaller films to come up, which don't have to have the baggage of bigger stars. And in industries like ours, where anyway we have certain limitations on budgets, I think this will really open up a situation where we will be able to feature many more films without that kind of the weight of the stars, which will also be, they'll find it easier to survive because of the same reason.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me, I know we've been given a limit of an hour and a half, but I have to ask all of you, do you see, Suresh, you talked about a shooting model where actors are quarantined, the whole crew is quarantined, it's a designated hotel, everybody shoots for an amount of time, doesn't go home in between, there are very few day players. Do you see that model working in our environment? Do you think the Indian film industry can adopt that? I saw a version of it also in the Hollywood Reporter. There was a whole article about standards and policies that they were trying to put down. But can we make that happen here?
It's going to be the need, no? Both a need to tell the story and also the financial need for that company. See, for example, there's a television company which owns a big studio here. He's been offering his whole studio. He said, get me a whole crew, and you can put them in my hotels, and you make your serials from here. And they go back after 20 days, after 40 days. So now it's, in the early days, people will not go in, but eventually, if they're going to pay me to make a film like that, I take a crew, and if I'm going to make something out of it, people will start. It has to happen, because that's the way the industry will go on. If there is content that, this will happen because content is going to be bought by the streaming people. See, if it was only cinema theaters, then probably we wouldn't have done it, because there's no end place to put my movie. Now I know if I go ahead and make a good small film or a medium film, and there is an OTT guy going to buy it, then I will go and I will get a crew that is interested to come and do it. And that will happen. And those models will happen. See, that's going to happen in different businesses also, this kind of quarantining holidays. See, a lot of people in the travel business are now looking at making resorts, family resorts. You go book the whole resort, you stay, come back. So this will happen. I'm sure it will happen. And otherwise, what else do? We have to earn some money. We don't know any other business. We need to get our bread and butter. So at least that's one way to do it, and we'll do it. We came from villages to the cities to make movies. So we'll do it this way also, if they tell us contract labor.
That sounds wonderful. Please, I hope we can find more solutions. Please continue to converse with each other, and let's get everything back on track as soon as we can. Thank you so much. It's been just amazing for me to listen to all of you. Thank you.
Bye-bye, guys. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Really
Bye-bye.
appreciate it.
Love you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.